The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
And hello again, wrestling fans. Episode 524 of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Jason Bryant here with you. And yes, I say 524 because I lost track of the actual numbers. I think there's been 550-something episodes in the Short Time Wrestling Podcast feed, whether they be unnumbered press conferences, the little short nuggets that I didn't actually number. I was in between ideas 4 or 5 years ago. But anyway, officially, I'm calling this episode 524 today. Going to talk to the new coach at Ursinus College. That is a Division III school in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, as Joe Jamison is replacing longtime coach Bill Racich, who passed away at the beginning of the season. Bill had been there 38 years. We'll talk about that as we get to the interview later in the program. Before we get there, I want to give you some updates on what's going on here at the network. I've got some home renovations going on. And what does this have to do with you? Well, I work from home. I have an office. I have a studio. And actually, I use studio in air quotes, which you can't see. This is where I've recorded this show for the last 5.5 years, at least. I don't even know. However long we've been here, that's how long I think we moved in, Memorial Day 2013. But with the way we moved here, there were some things about the basement space. And if you live in Minnesota, you got basements. It's pretty much great. It gives you more living space. Well, my oldest daughter is now 7, and she's had a lot of medical issues through her life. So when we bought this house, we said, okay, I'm going to be working from home. I'm going to be able to, be accessible to my kids. And at that point, we just had one, and we had to make this thing work. And it's a good space, but we had to create a separate bedroom, legal bedroom, for our in-laws to come stay, or friends and family, because I travel a lot for work. My wife also travels a lot, and some of that travel is international. So we had to create a space that was functional for all of our needs, and in case we didn't know what Lucy's needs were going to be. And I don't like to call her special needs, but she's got some special needs that are a little different than your average 7-year-old. She's a trooper, though. She's the toughest little kid I know. So we have to create a living space for people versus staying on couches. So we have to create a hospitable, legal living space. And then I'm also going to create a studio for me to work in that's sound treated, that is actually more apt to if you're going to be doing a full-time career in broadcasting, recording, voiceovers. So, it might sound fine right now, but it sounds, I can hear the echoes off the walls. It kind of drives me nuts. So I'm going to have a sound treated studio that's finally going to be built as part of this renovation, as well as, if you can do the math, I have 2 girls and I have a wife. And I'm at 39, 99.99. Okay, I'm 100% done having kids. So that means in about 10 years, I'm going to have 2 teenage girls and my wife in the house. Yeah, your boy's going to need some man cave time. So I'm building a speakeasy that is, kind of a private little section for me to watch all my wrestling and then put my junk all over the wall. I mean, I got so much stuff on these walls. And you can probably appreciate, as a wrestling fan, the stuff you accumulate over the years. Me, it's been T-shirts, it's been posters, it's been stuff that, it's just cool stuff that, coasters with wrestling things on them, stuff from the Olympics. There's a bunch of stuff I want to display, but it looks kind of gaudy as it is just like the main thing in like a downstairs office, which is supposed to be a spare bedroom, but has never served as such. So that is where I'm at. And what does that mean for you? Well, the next 8 to 10 weeks, shows on the network are going to be, I don't want to say sketchy. They're going to be spotty. There are some things that I'll be doing with my existing clients at Old Dominion, NC State, Little Rock, etc. On the Mat will still be coming out because that's recorded with Kyle and Andy down in Cedar Falls. We've got other, network shows that are going to be continuing to move on. Short Time is probably going to take slight hiatuses here and there. In the meantime, instead of doing heavy interview shows, I'm also going to be testing out a couple different formats to see what sticks, basically, because you've got to evolve. And I've evolved in this sport for the last 20 years. Gone are the days of writing for newspapers and then going to Fargo and in doing updates via dial-up. Gone are days of live blogging. Now we've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram and all these little video snippets that we can get content out in a less or a non-traditional format. So I'm going to shift what short time is eventually going to be, but I'm also leaving it up to you, the listener, to determine what type of format you like, or if I'm just going to mix it up and give you something that's all over the place. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, one episode may be historical, one episode may be a current event interview, one episode may just be a question of the week. In this case, I'm going to do a question of the week for my next episode. That question, which I have posted on social media under my Twitter account at Jason M. Bryant, and I've also posted it on the Mad Talk Online Facebook group. And that Facebook group at Mad Talk Online, not to be confused with the fan page at the Mad Talk Podcast Network. You can jump in to the Mad Talk Online Facebook group. That is where we're going to generate more discussion. I'm going to try to keep it troll-free because right now it's people that have contributed to the network and done good things, have been on the shows. So this is kind of a small closed group as it stands right now. So if you're interested, Mad Talk Online on Facebook is where you find it. So facebook.com/groups/Mad Talk Online. Hit the request button, and I'll look at it and see if you're good to go. So what's that question? Well, I grew up a professional wrestling fan, and I knew about it before I even got into the sport of real wrestling. And I don't mean to use the word real wrestling in a negative sense towards sports entertainment, but that's how we as a wrestling community have made the distinction between the two by using the word real so much, which is kind of interesting because right now in my speakeasy, I actually posted a picture of this on my social platforms, a giant banner from Real Pro Wrestling from 2001, 2002, 2003, from a while ago. Yes, I have an actual banner that has all the teams and some really just the technology in banner production has changed so much. But anyway, here's the question. I've noticed in the last 10 years, less of the college and high school wrestling world scoffing at our athletes going to the, air quotes, pro wrestling or sports entertainment route. Some used to call it disgraceful. Now I rarely hear that word thrown around when somebody goes from our senior level or our college level or our Olympic level to the WWE or its developmental programs or now AEW or Ring of Honor. There's a bunch of different organizations out there. Of course, the big dog is the WWE. So why is that the case? I remember when Kurt Angle got into professional wrestling or sports entertainment, there was this outrage. I mean, it wasn't as bad as like the faux Twitter outrage or recreational outrage that we see on social media platforms now. This was like wrestling people really mad, like almost betrayed. So I want to know why that has changed. So hit me up at Jason M. Bryant on Twitter. I've got direct messages open. You can hit me at jason@bryantwrestling.com. I'll be reading some of the better not every single response, but if it goes with what's in line, and I'll throw them in there. Sometimes if it's repeating the same thing that somebody else has done, I may just give you credits like, hey, you also said this too. But I want to be developing some feedback on like a question of the week, question of the month kind of thing. That way I get everybody engaged. And we do something a little different because there's mailbags, there's questions from friends on other shows and things of that nature. Well, that's great. They get answers. I'm going to stick to one specific topic and look for feedback there. So that will be maybe a topic show. I might break that up. I really am working through various formats of this show because there's so many podcasts out there. I want to make sure that this show remains innovative. It remains something different. It remains something you cannot get anywhere else with, of course, my unique voice. That being said, I want to give a shout out to our latest team member, Joel Hutzel. He went to madtalkonline.com/join the team or patreon.com/madtalkonline. And he became a patron. That means he is going to get the Fargo Almanac. He is going to get the NCAA Division I preview guide. He's going to get some shirts. He might get a hat, a draft guide. I don't know. We'll have to look, depending on your level of giving. At Joel's level of giving, he's going to get some cool stuff once we roll through. And I get all this stuff with the renovation and the new gear in from Compound. And I got some really cool 20-ounce draft glasses that if you're into craft beverages, you're going to like. Because when you crack open one of those tall boys and you fill up your pint glass and you realize that that's not a true pint glass and you've got a little bit left in the bottom of the can, isn't that annoying? Yeah, it annoys me too. So these glasses, 20-ounce Mad Talk, etched, that cloudy logo on it. They look sweet. I know they were a hit in Fargo. I gave a couple away to some of our clients and patrons that I saw out there. And, oh, man, yeah, I love these things because I can pour the whole can in there and not have to worry about anything sitting in the bottom of the can and having to take that second sip. It fits the whole thing. Now, if you like iced tea or lemonade, it's perfect for that too. A big, tall, cold glass with the Matt Talk logo on it that says, hey, yeah, I listen to this show. I support this network. And if you want to be like Joel and you want to support the network and see what you can get as a team member, go to matttalkonline.com/join the team. Or if you want to make a one-time contribution, you can go to matttalkonline.com/contribute, just like my man Jeff Pearson did, just like my man Pat Kelly did in the last couple weeks, and show your support for the network. If you're not into the subscription thing, if, my friend Jen Briney calls it value for value. So if you get value out of this network, contribute the value you believe you get out of this network. That's kind of the deal. Also, guess what? I got some big news coming on my SEC wrestling story. Yeah, you know what I was talking about? No? I'm going to be doing a series on the death of SEC wrestling. I've been talking about doing this for almost a decade. And guess what? Pat Dye, yes, that Pat Dye, the former football coach and AD at Auburn, through his people, have agreed to sit down. Well, we'll do it remotely, of course, and talk about at least his perspective while as the AD and football coach at Auburn about why that program no longer exists. I can't get Alabama because Bear Bryant was the AD and he's dead. So there's going to be a series. So if you're a former SEC wrestler, this is a call out. Or if you know a former SEC wrestler who was on a program when it was cut, reach out to me. I want to get that story too, because I got to get both sides. And I haven't seen an interview with Pat Dye on this in years. And let's be honest, part of my role here is almost as an archivist or historian is getting history right. I mean, there's a lot of information floating around about why this, why that. Well, let's get both sides of the story and let's see where the truth lies somewhere in between. That's the deal. So Pat Dye's people have agreed to come on the show. He's actually 79 years old and still doing a pretty cool radio show. And if you're not an Auburn football fan because they cut wrestling, no problem with that. But he does have a pretty good show out there. Actually, I went to listen to it to see exactly what he's talking about. And the guy's like 79 years old, still riding his tractor, farming and stuff. I mean, the guy's still hustling. So, more power to him. We'll figure out if we like him or not when it comes time to put together that package on the death of SEC wrestling. So if you're a former SEC wrestler who was on a team or your coach was or somebody was, reach out to me. I'd like to get their information and talk to them about what the scenario was like from their perspective when Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky, LSU, they cut wrestling. I've already got feelers out for other schools. Of course, it's odd because Kevin Jackson was just was just inducted to the LSU Sports Hall of Fame, and they cut wrestling right before his senior year. So it's one of those like bittersweet moments. Like, yeah, I'm going to the Hall of Fame for a sport you cut. I'm going to be pursuing that. That's another part of the format shifting I'm working on here. So 12 minutes I've been talking to you about things. If you're a first time listener, you don't care about. But if this is your first time and you do care about wrestling, glad to inform and educate and give you an update on what's going on. Now, cue the swoosh. We'll talk to Joe at Ursinus. Today, we're talking Division III wrestling with the new head coach at Ursinus College, Joe Jamison. Joe, you've got a distinguished career in the coaching ranks in New Jersey at some school named Princeton. Smart people apparently go to school there. But we're here talking Ursinus. We're here talking D3 wrestling, and welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be here, man.
I guess the first thing I've got to ask in regards to the Ursinus program is your memories and reflections of former coach Bill Rasich. And in case you're unfamiliar and you're out there listening, Bill coached at Ursinus for 38 years. We lost him. He passed away during the season. He had 500 wins, was just a great guy. And, in your memories of being a Division III athlete, what do you remember about Coach Rasich?
So, Coach Rasich, he recruited me when I was in high school. I wrestled at Archbishop Wood in Warminster, PA, and Ursinus, from where I went to high school, was only about a 30 to 40-minute drive. So, his presence was pretty strong in the area. And like I said, he recruited me to come there. I took one visit with a really good friend of mine, and we both fell in love with the school, and that was where I wanted to go. It was my number one choice. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. I got waitlisted. All those times my parents told me I should study more in high school finally came back to haunt me a little bit, and ended up going to Kings and had a great experience there. But over the years, then after I graduated, I started coaching and kind of kept in touch with them over the years. When I was at Princeton, we would send some guys to the fall brawl in my early years. And then actually my cousin, Danielle, ended up going to Ursinus. She just graduated a couple of years ago. She was the wrestling manager as well as a volleyball player, and now she's a volleyball coach at Ursinus. So I ended up, keeping in touch with Bill over the years. Just an extraordinary person. His passing rocked the entire community of Ursinus, and everyone was just completely devastated. But now, they got through the year, and they did a pretty good job. I felt they had one national qualifier, and now they're ready to move forward, but at the same time holding on to like the legacy and all the tradition that he built.
Yeah, I mean, I was with Bill in August prior to his passing. We were at the convention talking about things that, we wanted to do a D3, talking about getting him on the show, talking about his 500th win. Because when he won his 500th, he was hemmed up pretty bad with I think he had a knee replacement or something. He was on crutches for a while, and he's like, yeah, I'm still kind of medicated up. I don't need to do any interviews. He always had a coy sense of humor, and I remember when I first met him, I was like, no, how do you say your name? He goes, okay, Race, and he did the card thing, and then he went, scratch your neck, like Race Itch. So he always knew how to make an introduction. So when it comes to Ursinus, okay, now first of all, pronunciation. I've said it Ursinus. Is it Ursinus, Ursinus? I should know this.
E-R, yeah.
See, I should know this. I announced the freaking Division III championships. I mean, nobody's called me on it, but they are the Bears. And explain Collegeville, Pennsylvania, for those who are unfamiliar with its location and its landscape within college wrestling in this country.
So Collegeville is a great little town. It's about 10 to 15 minutes north of the King of Prussia Mall. And if anyone who lives within 2 hours of Philadelphia knows the King of Prussia Mall, it's one of the biggest malls in the area. It's a great little town. There's a nice little main street, and a lot of the town kind of centers around Ursinus. That is the whole town, and everyone has a tie to the college in one way or another. I'm meeting with an alumni Wednesday who is taking me to lunch at a local pizza place that, does a lot of the food for all the sports teams when they travel, and it seems to be the whole center of the community, and everyone just loves the school.
I've even got a tie to the school. Janelle Benner, the field hockey coach, then known as Janelle Engel, she went to Old Dominion same time I did. So there is a field hockey tie to there, and go figure.
Yeah, and actually the athletic director at Ursinus, Laura Malkin, actually played at Old Dominion.
So yeah, we got all sorts of ways to tie this back to me. A show about you, we're bringing it back to me. No. In all seriousness, respectable program there, and Bill did things the right way. I assume you're going to probably keep that tradition on, having spent the last decade and a half at a school of higher learning such as Princeton.
That is the plan, man. We are. Like I said earlier, Bill has built a huge legacy and tradition there, and I was in there yesterday just getting my feet wet in the office, and as soon as you walk into the gym, there's a banner there of all the conference championships for the past 20 years or so, and I lost count. They're on 3 different banners, and it's at least 14 or 15 of them. So I got I said to someone, filling Bill's shoes is going to be impossible, but I'm hoping I can walk, right next to him.
When we look at your background, you were a Division III athlete, wrestled for Ned McGinley at King's College, a little bit of an injury-riddled career, but what about your wrestling career in college kind of maybe steered you to the coaching side of things?
It's funny, yeah, I spent a lot of time being injured, and I never even got the chance to wrestle in a qualifier to get to NCAAs. Spent 2 years in the varsity lineup. When I got injured again right before the qualifier of my junior year, it was the fourth disc I herniated, and at that point, kind of realized that this was just not going to work anymore for me at that time. At the end of the year, my teammates still voted me captain of the team for my senior year. I was going to try and hope to come back. It didn't work out, but Coach McGinley offered me the opportunity to kind of be like a student coach, if you will. He had me design, back then, schools, D3 schools didn't have like people in athletics that, they're strength and conditioning coaches. And so he's like, why don't you we'll sit down together. We'll design the lifting program. You can travel with the team. You can help us during matches. So he really gave me an opportunity to kind of, get my feet wet in coaching while I was a senior. And I fell in love with it. I loved it. And I knew right then and there coaching is something that I wanted to do.
When you look at the coaching landscape, so much of these Division I coaches. Very few actually have non D1 experience. You're a guy that was on a staff and then moving over to the wrestling club at Princeton. That was not a Division III. I mean, you were not a Division I athlete. You're a Division III athlete, but you weren't even a Division III All-American. And is that somewhat kind of a deterrent for some of the hiring practices at the Division I level, or how did you really get your foot into a Division I assistant coaching gig with a lack of credentials, as people might look at it?
Yeah, so I was actually coaching in Lawrence, New Jersey at a middle school, just trying to get, I was living in PA but coaching in Jersey, just trying to really get to know a lot of the other coaches in the area. I would start contacting people and going to clinics, and there was a club that was run out of the Lawrenceville school, Lawrenceville Prep, that was run by Mike New, who is the former Princeton coach. I met him a couple times at tournaments when he was promoting his camp, and he asked me to come by. He was like, "Hey, why don't you come by this club?" And so I started showing up, coming by, helping kids out. And then one day he asked me, said, "Hey, why don't you come into the Princeton room? We're having a couple off-season practices. Why don't you come by?" Came by, was wrestling around. He said, "We need a lightweight coach. Are you interested?" I was like, "Heck yeah, I'm interested." And of course, the Princeton program back then is much different of a place that it is in now. And so I was there with Mike for 1 year. And then at that time was when Chris Ayers got hired. And, Chris, he came in, and I spent the whole summer working with a couple incoming freshmen, and he asked me to stay on as a volunteer assistant. And, and then we spent 10 years together coaching. I always joke at the time, Chris was, they only had enough for one full-time head coach, one full-time assistant, and then everybody else was part-time. And the joke I always tell people is that I was the cheapest labor available, so he kept me on staff. But Chris and I, we've spent a lot of time together, and we've been through a lot, and I'm thankful for the opportunities that he gave me, because there's no way I'd be at Ursinus right now.
And you were there for the ground floor of a lot of things. I remember we were talking way back in 2006. I think it was one of the first Beat the Streets galas. It was at the Bowery. It didn't even have any. There's no wrestling attached to it. It was like, hey, let's go to this expensive place. I had a $12 Jack and Coke. I'm sitting there going, okay, I don't want to spend a whole lot of money. I don't have a whole lot of money. I was like, yeah, can I just get a Jack and Coke? That'd be $12. I'm like, that was my only drink that night. And I'm like, I cannot afford this city. But we were talking about what you were doing with Beat the Streets back then, what you were doing with Princeton and the Princeton Wrestling Club, and we flashed for that was 13 years ago. And, what's it like to see all those things that you had your hands in and hands on really blossom to what it is, from the college program to the club programs, both in New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania?
It is, just when Chris first came on and he kind of laid out his vision for what he thought Princeton could be. And his saying was always, why not us? Why can't we do this? To watch someone to have that much foresight and have that much belief in his own vision for what the program could be, and then actually see him do it is just astonishing. And if you ask him, he'll tell you he's not done. He's got 3 returning All-Americans. They finished, I believe it was 15th at Nationals, and he's still not satisfied. He still feels like they have a lot of work to do, and the sky's the limit. And he's going to keep going until he gets the Ivy League title and they get in that top 5 and start contending for a national title. But to see just the growth and be a part of that, I've learned so much. Even as being like the part-time assistant and volunteer assistant, just being part of that process was, such a great learning experience for me.
Before we get to your goals and program aspirations for Ursinus, I want to go back to Ned McGinley for a minute. I had him on the show,
Sure.
back when we had the Ice Hour, when he was retiring. Spent 48 years as the head coach at King's College, wrestled for John Reese across the street, basically at Wilkes. And, he struck me as a very interesting character, a guy that had a lot of stories. What were some of your favorite Ned McGinley stories that you can share?
Ned's got an unbelievable amount of stories. I actually had lunch with him not too long ago. But there was one time, Ned was really involved in the Ancient Order of Hibernians Club, the AOH Club, up in Wilkes-Barre. And at one time, he was the national president for the entire organization. So every once in a while, he'd have to take a trip to Ireland for that. And one time, it was right before a break, we wrestled in Muhlenberg on the road. We're coming back on the bus, and we pull into the Wilkes-Barre Airport, and we're sitting there. What are we doing? He gets up and he gives us a salute and said, "All right, guys, I'm going to Ireland. I'll see you later." He just walks off the bus, and he goes right to Ireland. And thankfully, we were just getting ready to go on our winter break, but we were like, "Okay, Coach, we'll see you later."
Oh, with a name like McGinley, you figure you got to go to Ireland on a plane after a dual meet with Muhlenberg. I mean, who doesn't?
I know, but just, for him to not even tell us because he didn't want it to be a distraction for us to go to the match, and then he was just like, "All right, guys, we'll see you later." Just hops off the bus is just a riot, and that's just who he is, man.
What's the coaching landscape back then? I mean, did he have an assistant? I mean, who drove the bus back to campus?
We actually had we had a bus driver, thankfully.
Oh, it was a bus. Oh, it wasn't a van.
For that day.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
Usually we had vans, but I think for that one, he knew he was getting off the bus. So he got a driver for that one. Yeah, but we had a number of assistants. One guy who worked in admissions, his name was Randy. He was a great guy. He was an assistant. Another, Harry Voigt, who unfortunately has passed on. He was another assistant that was there with Ned for a really long time.
How hard is it for you to keep tabs on ye old alma mater after Ned's retired?
It's actually, Adam, the new coach, he's pretty good at keeping in touch, and they've been running like a high school club duels every year. So once a year, I take the Princeton Wrestling Club up there. I get to sit down and talk to him for a while, get to back to campus. So at least once a year, I'm up there. So it's pretty good. And always, it's my alma mater, so I've always kept tabs and follow along. And now I'm looking forward to competing against them.
Yeah, and I'm going to be quite honest. I do like the King's College mascot, but we won't turn this back to me here for a little bit. But now, that's a Monarchs, in case you're wondering.
That's actually a new logo. That was a big deal. They went through a rebranding. I'd say about 3 or 4 years ago, and they took a lot of alumni input with that. It was cool to be part of that process.
All right, now as we shift gears to what's going on in Collegeville. Coming from the Division I world and the club world and spending time in Jersey for all those years, even though you live in Pennsylvania, what is going to be the toughest adjustment for you to get into, this head coaching position at the Division III level?
Yeah, come down. I'm so used to wrestling all year round. So at Princeton we had the NJRTC, so these guys are coming in all year round, all the time, no matter what. Whereas in Division III, we're not even allowed to have off-season practices. Guys can come in on their own if they want to roll around. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time for me to build that culture within the program that, if they want to get on podiums, that they're going to have to take it upon themselves to grab a partner, come into the room for an hour, in the off season, a couple of days a week, and roll around, focus on their technique and what they need to improve on, because I am not allowed to work with them at that time. So, I just really want to spend some time and building that culture.
Looking at the regional alignment this year, I'm going to keep saying Ursinus is in the Mideast. There's been some new programs. We've had some things shifted around. We've also got your alma mater at King sitting in the Southeast. So we've got some alignment there between the Mideast and the Southeast regions that could be shifting depending on how many teams in New England get added that are moving teams out. And how much research did you have to do coming into this and applying for the position? Okay, who are we going to wrestle? Because the makeup of qualifications is different from when you competed in Division III.
Yeah, and I know throughout the whole Centennial Conference, they even though now they everyone qualifiers through those regional qualifiers for NCAAs, that everyone in the Centennial Conference just loves the tradition of it. So, and I knew going into my first interview that the schedule was primarily set for the most part for this upcoming season. So I didn't have a ton of input into it, but I do know also that we duel every team in our conference, whether they're in a regional qualifier or not, because that, and they still hold the conference championship tournament, even though, it's not a qualifier anymore. They want to uphold that tradition. And so at least half of our schedule is all conference matches. We're going down to Fort Lauderdale over winter break for the Citrus Invitational, which sounds great. I'm sure the weather's better there than at Midlands, so that's going to be fun. And it seems to be teams from just going through the brackets from previous years, teams from all over the country, from the Midwest and New England So it'd be good for our guys to get, some other competition except like all the regional teams.
But as it comes to qualification, when you're coming through, even though you never had the opportunity to wrestle in a postseason tournament,
Right.
You saw your teammates. When you're wrestling, it was historical data. It was the almost very Division I-esque in terms of how it qualified before this whole qualification system changed. And now we've got regionals, we've got teams over 100 teams going to be eligible in Division III. I think it's up to 110. I'm not 100% sure on that figure. Like I said, we're getting teams being added, almost 10, 12 a year across every level of men's wrestling. We've got a bunch more being added on the women's side, but the regional concept, regional model, what's your opinions of it?
Yeah, to be honest, for D3, I think it's awesome because there's just so many teams now. Like you said, it's over 110, and I can remember my first year. It was the East Regional Qualifier, and it was a tournament between the Centennial Conference and the MAC, and there was 18 spots for. I forget that back then how many teams there were, but there's well over 20 teams, and there was only 18 allotted slots. And I can remember 15 of the 18 spots went to the MAC, just by, from the guys who won the tournaments with wild cards, and only 3 kids from Centennial were able to punch their tickets. Because back then the MAC was so strong. It was, Kings and Lycoming and Del Valle and Messiah were all pretty much ranked in the top 10. And then and that was the last year for it. So then the following year, it broke off, and I remember the MAC only had 14 spots. So, we had like 5 teams ranked in the top 20 and only 14 available spots for kids to get the nationals. So if you didn't win your weight class, you were going to have to put up an unbelievable showing in taking second to get a wild card. So now I think it just opens up the opportunities for, all the kids nationwide to really, to wrestle their way in, as opposed to the past where, because based on historical data, the MAC was really strong, but it was based on data that was, 5, 6, 7 years old. So I think this is a much fairer way to do it.
How is this going to impact family-wise? Because you live in Langhorne, which a buddy of mine actually lives there, so I'm familiar with the area. I know the Neshaminy Mall. I've been in that area quite a bit when I lived on the East Coast.
Sesame Place, baby.
Say again?
Sesame Place. That's what we're known for here.
Well, I don't know that one. I just know I know the mall. And maybe a craft brewery up and down the road, but I won't go into that side of things. But how is this going to impact the family? Because you've been working in Jersey, living in PA, and then now this is the other direction. So what's the family situation like with this new position?
It's actually going to improve our family life, which is one of the reasons that it made it so attractive. Up until now, I was teaching about 45 minutes away in Cranberry, and I was coaching the club in Princeton. And my wife works for Amtrak, and she was doing a night shift, working 5 p.m. Until 1:30 in the morning. And when this opportunity came along, God bless her, she offered and was able to switch her shift to 5 a.m. to 1:30 in the afternoon. So now, so she'll get up earlier, a lot earlier, and go to work. I'll take the kids to school, head to Ursinus, after that, and she'll be home, in plenty of time, in plenty of time to grab the kids from school, and then in the off season, I'll be home, like everybody else does, around 5 o'clock when it's in the off season, and we'll actually have time for our whole family to be together, not just on her days off. So this is just a home run for us. I get to do exactly what I've always wanted to do and spend more time with my family. So it was a win-win.
Yeah, and you don't have to deal with that Jersey traffic. You're going the other way through the country roads of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, which is beautiful. Sometimes I'll have to time it out like around the turnpike, but once I get up the turnpike, man, it's smooth sailing.
Now, you talked about the ideals of Division III. You can't have off-season practices and things, but being able to be a successful program, what does that mean to an administrator at the Division III level? How do you measure success there at Ursinus?
And this is one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about with the administrators. Everybody likes to win. Winning's great. But I'm at the Division III level. I'm an educator at heart, and that's really what I believe in, is building good humans. And I'm still an educator. Wrestling is right now just the avenue in which I'm teaching these kids, how to be productive citizens when they leave school. And that's the number one goal. And if we're going to win championships while we're doing it, that's awesome. But really my goal is to produce great humans, and that's what I'm really aiming to do. And trust me, I want to win while we're doing it, but that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to produce great people who are going to come back and, go forth out into a society and really make things happen.
The focus on winning and the focus on creating great humans, we've got the Division III is a good mix of that, because you'll have programs that have killer graduation rates. They put a lot of wrestlers back into maybe the teaching or coaching pipeline, depending on the style of school they're at, because there are public Division III schools, there are private Division III schools. Now,
right.
When it comes to a school like Ursinus, what do you think the college's main goal is educationally with providing athletic opportunities to their kids? Because I've got to think that there's some similarities between the Ivy environment and a school like Ursinus in terms of, the sports is not the primary focus is why you're there.
Yeah, it's not the primary focus, but it is, but it is an important part of campus life. Ursinus only has 1,500 students, and there's 25 varsity sports. It's so, about 45% of the student body is involved in athletics in a varsity sport. So it's such an important part of campus life there. It's not everything. Academics is the number one focus. Our science is really strong in the sciences, and so they spend a lot of time making sure the kids are getting to their labs, and that athletics isn't a distraction to their academics, that it only enhances their experience there.
When it comes to recruiting, say you've got a kid that's getting Division I looks, how do you try to approach them and be, this Division III opportunity is what I believe is best for you, and I think you can get the most out of it? I guess the shift from recruiting a kid to the Ivy League to recruiting a kid to Division III, again, similar but different.
Yeah, so I think that we, just have to show him or her, hopefully in due time. Ursinus has just as much to offer, if not more, than all of these Division I schools. And a lot of times, you'll get these Division I caliber kids that always want to go to these big programs, and they're outstanding wrestlers. But a lot of times these kids will go to an Ivy League school and they can't break the lineup. And so they'll sit there for a couple of years and maybe never walk onto the mat because they're sitting behind, a Patrick Glory, at Princeton. So, if I can show them that Ursinus has just as much to offer as some of these Patriot and Ivy League schools, and I can give you an opportunity to go out and compete from day one, I think we'll have a huge rate of success there.
When we come to Division III chatter, again, a lot of it circles around the Battle of the Bergs, Augsburg, Wartburg. Now Johnson and Wales has made their name known when it comes to title contention. Yeah. What's the short-term goal? What's the long-term goal? Do you think you can get the Bear Wrestling program in there to battle with those Bergs?
We absolutely can. We just got to recruit and recruit. The team right now is pretty young. We had one national qualifier last year. So, from day one, it's going to be all about recruiting and just getting in there. And I think if we can retain a lot of kids, from District 1 in Pennsylvania, from District 12, and in District 11, District 3 is right next to us. If we can get a lot of those kids, it's a hotbed here. And if we can get those kids to want to come to Ursinus, if we can build, that wrestling community up in southeastern PA and make Ursinus the place to be, we're always going to be in the mix.
One thing that's unique about Division III is it doesn't take very long to become nationally competitive. It does take quite a while to become consistently nationally competitive. We've seen, I don't want to say flashes in the pan in a pejorative sense, but there have been teams that have showed up, had 2-3 good years, and then they had a group of athletes come through. What do you think is the key to having that consistency at Division III, to where it's not like, okay, I had one good group, we've made a name for myself, and we're never heard from again?
Yeah, I think we just need, one of the big things that I'm going to focus on early on is building a foundation within the community. When you look around the area, there's not many wrestling clubs in the area. There's like one or two. Ursinus doesn't have a camp where kids can come to in the summertime. There's no clinics that Ursinus holds. So, right away, I want to build up this wrestling community where everybody who's within a half an hour, 45-hour-minute drive sees Ursinus as a place that they can come to have a great wrestling experience. And, it's going to take some time to build that culture and build up that community. But I want kids that are going to come to Ursinus when they're 5, 6, 7 years old, begin to fall in love with the sport, and then want to come there in college, and work hard to get to Ursinus. That's what I want to build. And I think, it's going to take a little time to build that foundation, but I think that's going to be key for our consistent success.
Another key is kind of dispelling the myth about lack of athletic scholarships, which is something you've dealt with at Princeton, but now Division III say, it's non-scholarship, it's non-scholarship. What is Ursinus available to offer in terms of like financial type of packages? I mean, tuition, competitive, things like that make not just your school, but schools of the same ilk, competitive financially for these kids.
Yeah, so, some schools I can't speak about, obviously, but Ursinus has some great financial aid packages. 99% of students get aid. A lot of it is grant money and merit scholarships based on the student's academic profile. And just when I was reading up more about the school, in that sense, the average student in Ursinus goes there for half off tuition based off of a merit scholarship. So opportunities are there at Ursinus to really get a great financial aid package, but kids have got to work hard in the classroom to get it. And those are the kids that we want. They're going to be not only challenged in the wrestling room, but ultimately challenged in the classroom as well. And they're going to have to want it hard at Ursinus.
All right. One thing I love about Division III wrestling is the national championships itself. This year, back in the Iowa world, it's in Cedar Rapids, U.S. Cellular Center. I know that Dick Simmons is already chomping at the bit to get this thing going. But what do you remember about the Division III championships in terms of competitiveness or things of that nature?
Yeah, I went when I was a freshman. It was at TCNJ, so I got the opportunity to go and watch. TCNJ is 20 minutes from my house, so I got, and it was over spring break, so I got an opportunity to go and cheer on Eric Kelly, was our 125-pounder, and he qualified that year. He made it to the blood round, actually. But, it was just so darn competitive, man. There's just kids coming in from everywhere. And, they all have the same goals at kids at the D1 level, and that's to get on the podium. So at every round, they're all scratching and clawing and doing everything they can to win matches. And from what I saw, it's not in the, it's not the giant stadiums that D1 is in. It doesn't have the ESPN fanfare, but, the level of competitiveness is there, and all the kids want exactly the same thing.
All right, so this is great. So it's going to be like the 2020, it'll be over 20 years since you last attended this thing. Let me tell you,
right,
Joe, it is changed a little bit, and it's still pretty awesome, but it's, I think, even more awesomer than when you were there. Personal opinion aside.
I'm so much looking forward to getting back into that world, man. It's going to be awesome.
Who are you looking to lock horns with most from a coaching standpoint? I mean, you've been pretty well connected over the years, but there's some friends, there's some teammates, there's some people that you cut your teeth with in the sport that are coaching in Division III. Anybody you're looking to be like, oh, hey, let's square up and scrap here?
I follow a lot of the teams in the area. Mostly I follow the MAC because I wrestle in the MAC. And obviously Kings, I would love to, we're not on the schedule this year, but obviously, they're on my alma mater, and I would love to get up there and wrestle against them. But we also, when I was in D3, we wrestled a lot of those other schools. Like we wrestled Gettysburg. We wrestled Muhlenberg in Western Maryland. So I'm really, to be honest, I'm looking forward to wrestling all of them. And, I know some kids on some schools. I know a kid on Washington Elite because he came to Princeton Wrestling Club. I know a kid on Muhlenberg's team because he came to Princeton Wrestling Club. And same with Gettysburg. So I'm really looking forward really to just getting out there and then seeing a lot of faces of kids, when they were little, and now they're out competing at the college level.
Here's the thing. Here's how long you've been out of the D3 circle. You just said Western Maryland. It's now McDaniel.
Yeah, sorry,
I mean, wow, it's crazy.
College, excuse me.
Oh no, they're still cool. They maintained the cool nickname though. They are the Green Terror, in case you were wondering.
Which is the best.
That's really
Which is the best.
It's really cool. Westminster's a cool little town too. Lastly,
Yeah.
program goals.
I didn't realize I was going to date myself either. But
Yeah, it happens. It happens. So lastly, program goals. So, year 1 plan, year 3 plan, year 5 plan, a lot of D3 coaches go to that 40 and 50 year mark. Year 50 plan.
Year 1 plan is like I said earlier, I need to start building that culture where these kids are in the room all the time trying to get better, and we need to get back in the mix at the conference championships. I want to get back into that top 3 in the conference championships. They had a rough go of it last year, obviously, with Bill's passing, and the kids kind of went through the ringers, so to speak. So I want to get this program back on the straight and narrow and really move things forward. In 3 years, I don't see a reason why we can't be at the top of the conference and sending 5 kids into nationals. I see no reason why we can't. 5 years, I want to be, in the top 10. But we're going to have to recruit, and we're going to have to work hard. And, I'm taking that mantra from Ayers, why not us?
All right, Joe, heading into his first official season, how soon do you get boots on the ground, and do you get to be officially a Division III head wrestling coach?
I start Monday. So I was actually, I just finished teaching summer school today, and now I'm going in on Monday. I was in the office yesterday, kind of get my feet wet and feeling things out, but first official day is Monday.
And last thing, before we started, we talked about your high school career, and you actually had a scrap with one of your coworkers. You wrestled Sean Gray at Preps. Tell us a little bit about that story.
I did. So, and it's funny, Sean, Sean was a very big deal at Blair Academy, and of course, going to VTech and, becoming their all-time winningest wrestler. Some kid from Archbishop Wood at National Preps in the second round is not, one of its most memorable events. Going into my senior year, of course, back then, National Preps was a lot different. It wasn't seeded. There was no real qualifier for it. So I remember going into it. I had never placed in the tournament before, and my assistant coach told my father the night before the tournament, he's got a lot of good kids in his weight. There's 2 kids who he really needs to watch out for. Is this kid from Bolus Academy who placed last year, and he's coming back. He's real tough. And then, of course, Sean Gray is a 2-time returning champion. You got to watch out for him too. And of course, back then it was a blind draw. Brackets come out the next morning. First round, I have the kid from Bolus Academy. Winner gets Gray. And back then it was follow the leader. So if you lost, the guy you lost to had to make it to the finals for you to drop into the consolation bracket. So I'm walking on the mat wrestling a kid who placed the year before. And I was like, I need to win. Like, there's no alternative here. Ended up winning 3-1. Got Gray in the next round. Gray put it on me a little bit. Gray's got his famous GTS series. And one thing, in talking to Gray about it, he actually remembered the match and laughing, is that, I was like, there's no way, I'm not going over. I'm not letting Gray pin me. He pins everybody. I'm not going to let it happen. And I was battling with him and going. He got on top eventually, started working his, and I just wouldn't go over. And Buxton actually stopped the match because he thought he was going to rip my arm off.
Wow. That's quite interesting.
It was crazy. And then Sean ended up, of course, running through the whole tournament. He, pinned everybody in the first round from that point on. And I was lucky enough to, as we always joke now, I'm following his coattails to place in at the tournament because I got to wrestle back.
Sean's biceps weren't quite what they were today either. So maybe the beating could have been worse. You can always look at it that way.
It could always be now is right, But we always joke. He's like, "Hey, you want a rematch?" I'm like, "Nope, thanks."
Not a chance. No, I mean, we don't even want to talk about me and Sean's matches when he was at Virginia Tech. I just know that technically wasn't my apartment, and I may or may not have been souplayed by one of the members of said wrestling program. Wasn't Sean, but he definitely has fond memories of it. But Joe, good luck to you on the program. I'm curious to see what's going on, and of course, I'm really eager to see what you're going to do, and obviously preserving the memory and legacy of the late Bill Rasich, one of the best guys I ever met in this sport. So best of luck to you and the program down the line.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it, man.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. Hey, you know what? Did you like the show? You want to hit that subscribe button, mattalkonline.com/listen. Various different ways to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And if you're already subscribed and you already listened and you love the show and you want to support this show and this network, mattalkonline.com/join the team. Become a team member today.